Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dale Medeiros. I'm a senior regional planner with the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. We're a council of governments representing the 13 counties, cities, and towns of Northern Virginia. And I have the privilege of sharing with all of you the experiences that we collectively, that is Whitney, Sarah, Mike, and Matt, took a couple of weeks ago to study the ways the German system of apprenticeships, the dual system, functions, especially in the sustainability technology sector, and then to explore ways in which those experiences, those policies, the structure of the education works in Germany and how it might apply here to their own work. Before I go any further, I'd really like to have my friends, Whitney, Sarah, Mike, and Matt, introduce themselves going in the order that I just shared. Whitney?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Whitney Ketledge. I am the coordinator for career and technical education in Fairfax County Public Schools. So we have all of our CTE programming for the whole county, along with our work-based learning and STEAM and computer science, which is pre-K through 12 here in Fairfax. Thank you for having us.
Good afternoon, and I'm Sarah Martin. I'm the Director of Career and Technical Education for Prince William County Public Schools. Again, supervising and managing over 145 different CTE courses and programs in Prince William, and which includes, as Whitney mentioned, high quality work-based learning, business partnerships, and industry credentials. Great to be here.
Mike.
Good afternoon, everyone. Michael Grubbs. I am the Director of Career, Technical, and Adult Education for Loudoun County Public Schools. Similar roles to Sarah and Whitney, oversee pathways and programming in 17 high schools and one of our shared time centers. Significant focus right now on expanding pathways and high-quality work-based learning opportunities for our students, with a focus on industry-recognized credentials and internships and apprenticeships. I appreciate being a part of this panel today.
Matt.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Bechtel, and I am a work-based learning specialist. I work in Fairfax County Public Schools in the Office of Counseling, College, and Career Readiness, working directly with Whitney in the CTE office, and supporting students finding WBL experiences, work-based learning experiences, connecting with local businesses in our community, trying to connect them to our schools, and starting some of this work as early as elementary school, moving up through career days, career fairs, and beyond through the work-based learning continuum. Thanks.
That's
happy you're all here.
Great. Thank you so much. So what I'd like to do is just give you an introduction as to why we went to Germany, some of the things that made it interesting for us in terms of the dual system of apprenticeships. And then after I close, open it up into a conversation, guided by some of the questions that we thought in preparation for the webinar about, again, ways in which the dual system could apply to a region like Northern Virginia. The format is quite simple. After our discussion, I invite you all, the participants, during the webinar to park questions that you might have about the dual system into the Q&A box. But we would be happy also to unmute you if you have a pressing question you want to ask directly. The purpose, again, is to kickstart a dialogue that just doesn't end with this webinar, but extends into a longer-term process of how we can cultivate a system of formal apprenticeships by looking at this very inspiring lesson across the pond. So this is the team that you see in front of us. We spent a week at for the period, the third week in October, starting first in Stuttgart, going up to Hamburg. That's Whitney, Sarah, Mike, and Matt on the left. To Mike and Matt's, or to their right, to Mike and Matt's left are two apprenticeships from the Hamburg-based utility that were showing us the electric vehicle charging infrastructure that they were trained to maintain and operate across the city as part of the city's electrification plans and climate plans. While we were there, we had the privilege of meeting a lot of representatives and teachers and educators, not just from firms, but from chambers of commerce, training schools. The image on the left was the training facility in Hamburg, giving us a tour of some of the facilities that he uses to educate HVAC technicians, among other specific trades. The image on the right was from the Chamber of Commerce in Stuttgart. I believe that was a program in mechatronics that we looked at. But one of the, I think, most important questions is this just wasn't a study tour for the sake of taking a study tour. It was intended to look at really innovative pedagogical programs that fit into some of the workforce training demands that we have in Northern Virginia. And this is a report from 2024 that begins to answer the question, okay, what benefit is there for a region by looking at this educational system? And the bar charts at the bottom will give you some sense as to some of the issues and the challenges in our backyard that we were seeking to answer through the study tour. But I think equally fundamental is the fact that Northern Virginia is very dynamic and economically. There's a lot of firms in Germany. This was a study that the Northern Virginia Regional Commission did in 2023 that profiled the levels of investment within the boundaries of our 5 largest local governments, Loudoun, Fairfax, Arlington, Alexander, and Prince William counties. And what you'll see, and there's another graph that I'll show after this, is that Germany is a very significant investor in the region. And the data in the charts below highlight, again, that this is investment that comes with very high levels of job creation. About 5% of all job growth in our region is as a result of foreign investment. About 8 countries account for about 3/4 of all that investment. And the investment, particularly in the case of countries like Germany, as you'll see, are mostly in the STEM sectors. About 101 German firms employing about 7,000 people, 6,000 people, and close to $900 million in wages. And some of the more interesting statistics that came up in the report, and I'll put the link to the report to the NVRC homepage, included some really interesting statistics like, on average, wages in comparable commercial sectors, like, for instance, VW and Ford are 15% higher from the German investor than they are in the American equivalent. Or Nestle and Mars, Nestle being a Swiss-based firm in the food sector, their wages, again, are higher with benefits. And there's a parallel investment ecology in which these firms are also investing millions of dollars into research and development, which also supports and boosts a region's economy. And this is just a sampling of some of the firms that are in a region. This is not the backwoods. These are firms with a global standing and have a gravitas, but I think they can also be portals through which we can push suitable elements of the German apprenticeship system. And it's also relevant to point out that demographically, we're a very globally engaged region. We have a highly trained workforce. There's a need, I think, to find ways in which we continue to make that standing as high as possible. But this demographic diversity, I think, is a vital piece of why we look abroad for innovations. There's a very high level of receptivity to things like adopting pieces of the dual system. And last but not least, there are these driving issues of climate change, artificial intelligence, and the digital economy, which are very, very active in our backyard, that compel us to understand, again, ways in which electric vehicle training workforce development programs in places like Hamburg and Stuttgart could find application in Northern Virginia. Just a very, very short summary of the German apprenticeship model. The system goes back to the medieval era. That's not to say that it's outmoded, but to simply say that it has a very, very long tradition that's evolved into some very formal institutional structures that make it the world pioneer that it is. There's about 1,300,000 trainees spread out among about 333 recognized occupations for these credential systems: auto technicians, mechatronics, plumbing. Apprenticeships allow more than about 50% of all youth in Germany to learn a trade. I guess the core elements are that there's apprenticeships, there's internships that are paid through the applied training piece of the dual system mixed with vocational training at the school. So it's the applied training with the theoretical training. And the way that that generally breaks down, it varies across the trade, but in general, apprentices work about 3 days a week at a company, and then they study for about 2 days per week. And the apprenticeships are grounded in the work at a company under standardized contract between the apprenticeship and the company. The apprenticeships typically start around the age of 14. And the company is responsible for ensuring the apprentice is paid, insured, and also granted annual leave. And we learned it could be as much as up to 6 weeks per year for the apprentice. When we were in Germany, we saw some signs, for instance, for electrical technicians receiving wages up to $1,500 a month. So it's not chump change. The dual system also involves, as I mentioned earlier, a very structured system of mentoring. It's regulated, it's advised under the auspices of the German Institute of Vocational Training, and it has the constant involvement and advice and convening of the various chambers of commerce, the different enterprises across the country, the schools, and of course the unions. About 70% of all trainees in Germany are hired as full employees after their training, and the duration of the typical apprenticeship program is between 2 to 3.5 years. And then the apprentice graduates with a dual VET certificate issued by the chamber. It is nationally recognized. And the box at the bottom is just a sample of the approximately 500,000 types of contracts that were signed in 2019. And I was unable to find what the equivalent would look like for 2024, but I'll try to dig it up later. Just very quickly, there's often concerns with the notion of tracking, and the intent of this particular image is to convey that the dual system offers a lot of pathways, not just for apprentices, but for means to attain a bachelor's or even a master's. It's very fungible, and it's very, 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 I think, innovative, with lots of different opportunities for us to consider different applications for our own programs here in this region. Last couple of slides is that we see lots of benefits for studying the applications of the dual system. It's a pipeline of talent that's trained in-house, reduces the number of the employee turnover and associated HR costs through some of the things that we observed, harnesses growth opportunities for the economy of the region, but also for the businesses, boosts productivity with a highly motivated core of apprentices. And it's structured on-the-job training with aligned college curricula, as I indicated in the earlier graph. And again, back to the image that I shared earlier, we see these opportunities for the businesses that are in our backyard as means of taking that which they do in Germany and applying it through their work at, say, a VW dealership in Loudoun County, or a Mercedes-Benz dealership in Fairfax, or Rehau in an office training program in Loudoun County, or perhaps it's through what Rehau does with the application of geothermal heating and cooling systems in some of our schools, creating a real-world lab for sustainable technologies, or SAP, or Rheinmetall, or Airbus. There's lots of opportunities. We don't want to oversell it, but we see these as key to the conversations that need to go forward in terms of adopting pieces of the dual system. And then finally, this is the last evening that we were in Hamburg with a member of the German parliament, Martin Heckwardi, who also happens to oversee the committee within the German parliament, or Bundestag, overseeing and responsible for US-German relations. So I'd like to stop it there and then invite now thoughts and comments from my friends, Whitney, Michael, Sarah, and Matt, about what struck you during what you've observed in Germany. Whitney, what were some of the things that impressed you, or maybe made you think twice about what's suitable and what's not in terms of the dual system?
Yeah, thank you. I I think the biggest piece that I've repeated multiple times since we've been back is the company investment in the education and training of the students at such a young age. We don't see that here, where the company has such a stake in that student to the point that they would check up on the student's attendance and check up on the student's grades and really be that third factor of helping the student to be successful in school and in their training process. So having that company commitment that it's part of their responsibility and part of what they need for their company to be successful in the future with employees, but also for their community, that they have to take on apprentices, that they have to put in a financial stake, time, employees, all of those pieces, having that commitment from that company at all levels is so critical. And it's where we struggle with getting placements for students here, is companies having the time and having the funding and having the opportunities. So I think there's a bridge there that we could work on connecting, especially with German companies that are here who may have senior officials who are used to that kind of model.
Yeah. Sarah.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Whitney. And some of the things that when I went out and was truly asking, well, who helps direct and develop this curriculum pedagogically, right, for our students? So when the students make that choice, hey, I want to go into the apprenticeship or the dual system, right? They're really getting that support from their business partners or from the companies that the students are going to end up working with. And that is so critical to the students' development, not only in their studies, but also in their longevity of where they see themselves after they spend some time with those companies. So the big thing with me was who actually helps support the programs, who actually helps support the students to succeed. And bottom line, it's the village helps make those children grow. So it's not only the students and their families, but it's really the companies who are investing in them. So they are the extra eyes and ears on the ground, so to speak. So that was one of my largest takeaways, is that we need to get a lot more folks where our students are coming from and going to be invested in their education.
Yeah. Mike.
Yeah, I agree so much with what Sarah and Whitney have shared. I'll also add, for me, I think I was biased thinking that the German dual system was so much about tracking. At an early age, you're going to pick a path. What was eye-opening to me was this respect and acceptance that you can jump from one track to another. There's multiple on and off ramps. Talking to the apprentices and the business partners, you could go down one track and still pursue higher education, or vice versa. I really think that that's an accepted model that could be embraced here as well. But I just, again, I think those on and off ramps was eye-opening for me for students.
Yeah, Matt.
All right, so yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. Obviously, the biggest thing for me is just seeing the employer commitments, as well as through the chambers. The chambers play such a huge role in the work that is done through the dual system that when you compare that to what we have here in the States, it's not the same, especially here in Fairfax County, where we have 14 chambers to deal with. So trying to make sense of that, first of all, is a large enough obstacle, and then having them play an integral role of supporting us with high quality work-based learning we never really get to that point, just because of the fact of there's just so much to work with. I love seeing how involved the chambers were in supporting the government on how the legal framework looks, how they have their say in the school-based training, very similar to how we set things up in the Department of Education. But they also help recruit the employers too, get those training opportunities, get them training they need. And that way it's something that makes things easier for the employers, instead of us just knocking on doors and saying, hey, you need to come support this. But it sounded like the chambers of craft, chambers of commerce really played an integral role in all of this to lighten the workload on the schools. And that's one of our biggest concerns too, with just the fact that in Virginia, there's this missing space of what's called like an intermediary, where we have employers and we have our schools, and we need to connect anything, that was clearly on display while we were out on this visit. Thank you.
Well, let's pick up on that. I mean, this missing space. Our chambers are not allowed by law, like in Germany, to compel their members to join. If you set up a small business or if you're a big business like VW, in Germany, you have to become a member of the chamber. But how do we fill in this missing space? What are ways in which you think we could start finding pieces of the dual system that could be applied in your own work in Fairfax?
Yeah, we've been talking, Matt and I are sitting here together since we work together, so we can kind of both take it, but we've been talking about this idea, and I'm cheating a little because it kind of is my answer to the next question, but this idea of flexible seat time for students, because a lot of our thoughts as we were at these schools and at these businesses in Germany is our system is not set up this way. And our kids have to go to school until they're 18 for their full high school education. And in Germany, that is different. Students finish their compulsory earlier and then have to pick a path. So I think we need to look differently at what a day looks like for a student in the US, or at least in Northern Virginia. And we have some opportunities, hopefully coming soon, with flexible seat time opportunities. And how can we use that flexibility and use some of our technology and resources with online classes and accelerated learning and things like that to provide opportunities for students who know this is a path they want to take, so that they spend more time at an apprenticeship during their high school years instead of fulfilling all of their high school credits and then some because of the seat time we require, and then getting an apprenticeship after they graduate. Matt, you want to add?
Yeah, so I agree with all of that, and basically what helps us with all of that is, not just the flexible time, but also in educating these prospective employers on what that could look like. So as things change for us in the school system, we need to keep the employers up to date with how they may engage with schools and connect to our programs, and what opportunities they have to pull our students for these apprenticeships, and make that flexible for them as well and meeting their needs. And it kind of goes along the lines of moving more into our employer engagement. We did a little bit of that last year. We're going to continue a lot of that work this year, on all fronts of high quality work-based learning, but specifically digging deeper into apprenticeship, because it is one of our larger focuses, especially as it is one of the 6 remaining HQWDL experiences. Needless to say, as we learn more on what we can do, we want to make sure that we educate our community so that they're aware of those opportunities, and not always look at those as barriers, but look at those as through lines into in building the talent pipeline they need to keep students here in Northern Virginia.
Yeah. So what does that conversation look like down in Prince William schools?
Oh, I'm so happy you asked. I do think that when we talk about connecting the workforce and our councils and our chambers, so I know the Prince William County Chamber has a Educational Workforce Development Council. And so they spend time monthly discussing how they should interact together. So the 3 school divisions within Prince William have an active part and seat at the table for that conversation. But again, as Matt said, it's the education of our business partners because education itself is a business, and it's kind of hard to break into unless you have a contact, right? And so it's putting our contacts out there. It's hosting events like today, getting folks on our advisory council meetings to educate our partners and the folks that we lean into to help guide and instruct our curriculum. So it's truly, you don't know what you don't know. And we had preconceived notions going into Germany, and I'm sure that Germany had our friends over there had some preconceived notions of what education looked like in the US. And so it is truly like, just open the doors and let's have some conversations. And I think a lot can happen from that.
Yeah. Now, what's it sound like over in Loudoun? I mean, Mike.
I think just Well, I have a few thoughts. When I came back from Germany, I was really trying to focus on where do I get those small wins, right? How do I just start the conversation? I think with our chamber, we've had some opportunities to get in front of those business partners. We need to increase those opportunities of sharing the great work that we are doing, and the resources and the supports that we have for our business partners, to meet them where they are. And so I think our team is just increasing those opportunities to start some of those conversations. We had a workforce summit just 2 weeks ago. We had over 350 business partners there, and those business partners left with, what are we committing to? They could choose mentoring or job shadowing or an apprenticeship. And I think that's been a really good starting point for us to try to just meet everybody where they are. I think the other opportunity, it might have been Whitney that talked about schedules. There's a significant difference between the German model and the American model for our schedule during the workday. And so one thing that we're looking to pilot this spring is an evening pre-apprenticeship program with independent and electrical contractors. So for me, trying to think outside the box around student schedules, because that's not going to be something that we can fix immediately or quickly. So how can we leverage other unique schedules like evening or summers or weekends, to maybe try to build on some partnerships moving forward?
One of the things we talked about was there's lots of international exchange taking place within the school systems. And maybe there are opportunities for, in the context of some of the methods that you just described about bridging conversations among the schools and the businesses. But is there the potential, or is any use in sort of steering the development of a strategy in places like Fairfax or Loudoun that would guide or channel more purposefully youth educational exchanges, or would that be just simply a waste of time?
I mean, I'll go ahead and share it. I think, especially with students, I think they learn best from peers and colleagues. And so I like the idea of making those exchanges and those connections, whether it's our students or our teachers. Because I think you're always going to get more traction. Where if I come back from Germany and I come to our teachers and I talk about where I think we should go, I think their colleagues are going to be a better advocate to try and show them, the opportunities for leveraging some of what they're doing. So I think opportunities like that would go a long way. I think also colleagues across the pond can share some of the things that they're doing, like orientation. That was a big takeaway for me. At very early ages, they're getting students through, I think it was like a week-long orientation to the trades. And I think those are small wins that our teachers can build upon immediately. If I approach our teachers sometimes around doing like a summer camp or an orientation, they might see it as like top down, where if you see it from your colleagues, it's maybe a little bit, and the entry point might be a little bit easier. Buy-in might be a little bit more comfortable. So I think that'd be a great strategy for next steps.
And Whitney?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I would just add, you really can't undervalue an experience that gets a kid out of a classroom and a teacher. Just even getting our kids and our teachers out of the buildings around here gives them different opportunities to see and talk to people that they don't normally talk to. So any exchange, any experience that they could have like that is so valuable in so many different ways. Not just for their education, but for their just understanding of our global economy and our system and culturally and all of the things that come with that kind of experience. There were so many misconceptions that we talk about, the tracking that we thought Germany really had that they don't, but we also found so much common ground with, there's still a stigma with trades in their society, and they still push a lot of kids towards college. And we found a lot of areas that we really are so much more similar than we are different. And I think that is really important, and having experiences getting outside of your bubble or your little Northern Virginia region is the only way to really help people get past their current thoughts and ideas. Yep, go ahead.
I can add to that as well, as far as what Mike said with the orientation. I feel like there's an opportunity there for us to dig into what in Germany they had as a training ambassador program. And that ambassador program is essentially bringing in second and third year apprentices that could, speak as speakers at our middle schools, or even in our high schools and some of our entry level courses, so that they can kind of hear directly from individuals that are close to their age, instead of hearing it from teachers, hearing it from other folks out in actual industry. There's something to be said about making that connection to someone who's in that career, who's starting that career path at the beginning of that career path, and it can provide insight that hopefully will help them solidify their plans and moving in that direction if they wish to do so. So sending students out is great, but I feel like there's so many challenges anymore with transportation that anything we can do to bring people into these programs is another viable option. And that, how do we can modify that training ambassadors program more so than what would be done in the past with academies and things of that nature.
Well, Prince William County.
Yeah, similar. The similarities of trying to find or trying to motivate those students to, hey, take a look at the trades, right? Because one major difference, obviously, is the expense of college on our side of the water, that it truly outweighs sometimes the students say, I just can't go. And they may then choose a trade. But if they knew up front that, hey, you're going to start making money at a lot younger age with a lot less debt, we partner so closely with our community college partners that, there are opportunities for students to go so far just with their certificate program, and enticing students to look at different opportunities than that 4-year pathway. And it's one stigma that I really just gets under my skin, is that, well, students aren't ready for, or, college isn't for everybody. It's the conversation is, what would you like to do, right? What's your job, and what's the education it takes to get there? Because just going to a 4-year college or university isn't going to always match, and it's not always going to prepare you for that work, right? So how are we going to get that message out? It's to parents. But, in Prince William, we are the 7th largest diverse in the country. And when you think about parents and families coming to Northern Virginia, and specifically in Prince William, that is their mindset as well, as, hey, I'm leaving wherever I'm from to come to America for a better life for my student, and I want them to go to college, right? So it's educating that and breaking that myth that says that college isn't for everyone. Going into the trades or going into certificate-based programs are really where your students can start and should start, depending on what they want to do. But it was eye-opening to see how similar we are, because I think Germany and the folks that we talk to are having the same struggles. How do I get students to come back in as we start to exit a lot of our expertise in those areas?
Yeah, picking up on that point reminds me of the anecdote that the member of the German Bundestag shared with us, Martin Heckwardi in Hamburg. And he was relaying to us the conversation that he had with the vice president's office, and how the federal labor education experts within the current administration were interested in the German apprenticeship model. They liked it, but it was in this very specific context of mostly the manufacturing sector, right? And I think that this is what we were hearing periodically, was that the success stories of applying the dual system in the United States have been with regions like Charlotte, or in the Lehigh Valley, or in Indiana, where manufacturers representing a pretty solid collective voice, Siemens and Bosch, coming and saying to the community colleges, to the career technical education programs of the schools, hey, we want you guys to work with us to cultivate, to develop a trained and a skilled workforce that we will hire. And by the way, here are pieces of our own pedagogical workforce training system, the dual system from the mothership, that we can integrate it into Charlotte, into Indiana, into Pennsylvania. We're not manufacturing, right? We're service. We're the digital economy. This gets to the point that Sari just raised, was what might a conversation look like, and also ties into Matt and Whitney's and Mike's earlier points about some of the employer engagement fora that you've been creating. But what might a collective industrial voice of, say, German firms sound like, coming to you guys and saying, if we were to promise internships or / internships that could evolve into apprenticeships, what are some of the specific, the sectors, the job sectors right now best suited to that in the digital economy or in the service sector? Because again, we're not manufacturing Volkswagen IDs. We're not manufacturing cranes or gas turbines or power generation systems like they are with Siemens in Charlotte. We're more diverse. You know, if VW doesn't have its plant up here, it's in Chattanooga. But what might this collective industrial sector, and I'm trying to channel the conversation to something like data centers. You know, there's firms like you know, Equinix with activities in Frankfurt and others. But is there a way to create a collective industrial voice that would advocate and call for some of the things that you've been saying? Hey, we want these pieces of the dual system because it reflects what you're already doing in Germany. What might that sound like in our region, a collective industrial voice?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. I think echoing some of what you shared, finding, you know, like Equinix, they are split between Germany and here, and they have a model that maybe our counterparts could bring to our local employers, our business partners, to just showcase, hey, this is working. Here's some roadblocks. I think just starting that conversation with folks that have a model that's more locally based. I think for us, speaking for Loudoun County, I think data center technicians have a real opportunity to be apprenticeable or an increase on internships. We're focusing on Loudoun's 7 key sectors, which are economic development drivers for the region. So I think about aerospace, aviation, information technology, data centers, communications. So I think just getting those groups together that have very similar workforce needs, and just, I think, having that initial collective conversation around, let's not meet with you all individually around probably the exact same problem. Let's come together and let's kind of find out like our top 3 strategies and solutions. Because I don't want to speak for Whitney, Matt, or Sarah, but often I'm meeting with all these business partners separately to just really share the same challenge and offer the same solution. And so maybe just a starting point is bringing a small group together and just having that collective conversation.
Yeah, I can add, none of us ever want to speak for each other, but we all basically say the same thing. I agree, and I was just thinking about a meeting I had a week or 2 ago with some data center folks, and just having conversations about what that looks like, and they were really stuck on, you know, we don't bring in interns or apprentices until after they graduate. They have to have a diploma. I was like, well, let's talk about that. Like, can we think about this a little differently? Because if I give you a kid that has had training in safety, in electrical, in whatever it may be, I'm not talking about just your average college prep only kid that doesn't have any technical expertise. These kids are prepared, they have certifications, they know what they need to do, and they're still kids, yes, but they're 14, 15, 16 in Germany going to an apprenticeship, and they're still teenagers. So I think it's possible if we can help shift that mindset. And we talk a lot about the regional approach, because a lot of us don't live in the division we work in, and the companies don't care. If you can get to work, they don't care which city or county you live in. So that regional approach and helping the employers see past maybe what we have traditionally been able to do with them is really important moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mike.
and I'm thinking when we are not only talking about, you know, the mindset of the parents changing, but it truly is when you are thinking about the United States, it's we are stuck in this old, and forgive me because I've only been in public education my entire career, but we're an archaic system that sometimes boxes ourselves in, right? And so employers are especially locally, if they're United States-based companies, that's what they know, right? So it would be a great opportunity for us to have like a summit of sorts to talk about what that looks like, bring in our community college partners as well, because oftentimes our students in high school are getting that college credit. They're earning those certificates while they're in high school. So does it matter that they're 17 and 3 months later, they're 18 and, you know, at the same place, right? So I think it's really the skill based and the knowledge that we should look for rather than the age to go into some of these companies because you know, kids have a lot more experiences in their backyard and in their backpack now that they carry around with them than we did a long time ago.
Mike, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Whitney was sharing something that made me, that you were talking about the collective conversation. And I think such an important starting point of that conversation is that this is not transactional work. Whitney was talking about some of the genuine interests in partnering and collaborating. And my biggest takeaway with the tour was in some instances, you're part of that business's family, like literally, like the family lived across the road from some of these businesses. I think that's so important because if we enter some of these conversations in the US that we're just trying to fill workforce needs, that's not sustainable. Or the second that graduate decides that it's not for them, it's a failure of an initiative sometimes, right? And so I think just starting that conversation that, hey, these are high school kids. We do want to fill the workforce, but we also are trying to just educate them on whatever opportunities they have in the future. I just saw that so much in Germany that they were trying to close the workforce, but you could just feel, even if they didn't articulate it, that it was very human centered. It was very, this individual is part of my organization. I'm going to look out for them. Right. And I think that's such an important part of our approach moving forward, because sometimes I get a knock at the door and it's just send me some graduates that can just go to work tomorrow. And I appreciate that, but I think it's more important about, hey, let's connect with these kids and see if they're a good fit and how can I help them come along in the process. So
Go ahead.
So Mike, I'll build off that as well. And that human-centered approach is so important because at the end of the day, cost of living is so expensive here. So it's not just getting these students interested in these career paths, but also how do we retain those students, make them feel part of something bigger, and that there's room for growth. And that's part of everything we do. We try to do with workforce development, where you might be entering at the entry level, but you need to map out what the next 5-10 years is going to look like. So these students know that they're investing in something, as well as these employers are investing in them as not just an employee or a number, but in a person that's being part of that corporation, that philosophy of what's driving them to be more productive. I was also going to say too, with and Sarah brought this up with the Northern Virginia Community College. We have great partners with IET, the IET program, data center operations, and engineering tech. A lot of our counselors and teachers have gone out and done these externships with the data center operations, which have been phenomenal. What I found is that a lot of times these students that are college level end up getting hired before they even finish the programs. So if they're in that much need, how do we get that to work? To Whitney's point, like how do we get them to look at our students too? If there's such a need, and these students have these skill sets, let's figure it out. Let's bring our regional power to the table and do what we can as we all work together on all of this.
Great. I'd like to turn attention to some of the questions that have been entered into the Q&A box. Robert Head writes, do you have career centers, and I imagine this is directed to all of you, do you have career centers that are set up for half days? If so, you can use career technical education time and money to making a half-day system in place for a pre-apprenticeship style, then transition to a full RAP program after high school. How would you respond to Mr. Head's question?
So some of us have career centers and some of us have academies. In Prince William schools, we do not have an academy. We have specialty programs that are based at the high schools. There is not a regional technical center, so to speak, but that does work in other areas outside of our region. So I know that as a possibility to be right now. Unfortunately, we don't have one.
We have kind of a hybrid model in Fairfax. We have 6 academies that have some of our more highly specialized programming. They're all over the county for geographical purposes, but we also have some highly specialized programs in regular based high schools, and we have CTE programs in all of our high schools, as do my counterparts here. But we don't have a half-day model currently, but we do have the ability to schedule that way. So I think it goes back to that idea of more creative scheduling and how can we do that. And you talk about a system like Fairfax with 26 going on 27 high schools and getting everybody on the same page is the biggest hurdle to start with. So it's trying to think differently and how can we set up systems and change systems and turn this giant aircraft carrier just ever so slightly in the other direction.
Yeah. Matt, Mike?
Yeah, I'll share out. We're similar to Whitney's model. We're a bit of a hybrid. We have CT pathways within a zoned comprehensive high school. We also have academies and special programs. And then we also have a shared time center, regional vocational center, technical center. We have a full day model right now, so you come every other day, but we are just literally yesterday talking about, is that the best model? Do we want to move to a half-day model to leave more opportunities for some work-based learning? So I appreciate that question, because I think sometimes you're like, well, this is the way that we've been doing it for 15 or 20 years. Does it necessarily meet the new direction? So we're actively looking at some new scheduling models as we speak.
Great. And then Peter Simpson had 2 suggestions. He points out that the German Academic Exchange Service has a similar program for colleges and universities called Germany Today. You shared with us the link, and I'll take a look into it, see if it has connections possibly to high schools. He adds that perhaps you can work with a local DAD office to plan a similar event for those in the apprenticeship space. Happy to report that I'm a DAD ambassador, so of course I will look into that. Thanks very much, Peter. Then Peter Simpson adds, it also sounds like you're thinking about a regional sector partnership of sorts. The state of Colorado is a big leader in this space. If you'd like more information, he shares with us links. I'll circulate this as well at the end of the discussion. Irvin Varconi writes, what is the role of our state and local legislators to support a shift in educational goals that could move our schools toward the German model? I'll start with you, Whitney.
Hi, Irv. Irv is our chair of our advisory council here in Fairfax, so thank you for joining us. And we talk a lot with our advisory committee about state legislation that kind of holds us back from shifting away from our current model, because we still have to answer to the Virginia Department of Education and some other regulatory boards. So I think it's an excellent question. And when you look at the German model, you do see a lot of federal legislation that forces the companies and the schools to do things the way that they do. And so there are pieces of that moving forward with flexible seat time, moving forward with credit-bearing apprenticeship experiences, getting students credit for different courses that they're taking towards their diploma. Because a lot of times diploma requirements will get in the way of a kid having enough time to do a full CTE pathway or completer sequence or apprenticeship. So I think there are a lot of pieces there. But Mike and Sarah and certainly Matt, feel free.
I could just say that, as Whitney was mentioning, the biggest connector piece of all that is Virginia Works, the Department of Workforce Development and Advancement, which has basically put together DOLE, which supports all our apprenticeship model. As it moves into more registered apprenticeship, more so than youth registered apprenticeship. But the Virginia Works brings in the economic outlook dashboard, pathways dashboard, all these different components. And they're the ones that are working with VDOE to help us with figuring out what that flexible seat time looks like, and so on and so forth. So, you know, as that work continues, and you know, Irv, you're part of that with the advisory committee, we bring what we can to the table and make those changes where necessary.
Sarah?
So, being the senior CTE director of this group, I remember when certifications was just brought forward to the state department, Virginia Department of Education, and it really took the professional organizations. So our manufacturers came in and said, hey, we need this, because in order for companies to come to Virginia, right, to build our economic development, they are looking for a pipeline of candidates, of employees. So the Board of Nursing, for instance, went to bat and gave us some flexibility of our licensed practical nursing programs or our farm tech programs, or the state boards for cosmetology gave us a little bit of flexibility. So it's really getting those companies to be advocates of not only education as a whole, but specifically career and technical education and where we fit in that puzzle. So it doesn't, you know, educators can talk all day long, but it looks as if we're trying to save our jobs, right? But if you have the support of your business partners, and they say, this is truly what we need to be successful in the Commonwealth, to bring economic development and vitality to the state, then the education systems have to come on board, right? Because that's where they're going to get their workforce.
Mike?
Yeah, I think Whitney did such a nice job capturing kind of where we are with the ecosystem and VDOE, and Matt with CareerWorks, and Sarah with the business partnerships. Maybe one thing that I'll add is, as a school system, at least for Loudoun, we're seeing an increased focus on getting ahead of some legislative conversations and the importance of engaging with our local and state legislators. And so just this Friday, we have a legislative breakfast, and one of the topics that's baked into that agenda is workforce development, whether that's new legislation, whether it's looking at current legislation, but it's becoming a really big focus for us. And I think there's maybe some seeds that can be planted with our local and regional employers. Since we're talking about apprenticeship, and don't quote me on this, it's been a year or two since I looked. I tried to do a quick Google search, but I think the National Apprenticeship Act, I don't think it's been renewed or updated since like the early 1900s. I think it's a 1.5, 2-page document. I think things like that are a great starting point for us, because we're sitting on an over 100-year-old document around our stance and views of apprenticeship, right? I know a few years ago before COVID that they were looking at either revisiting that or coming up with a new legislation. I think that's a great starting point for us, just to lean in on.
Great. And I am sensitive to the fact that we have only 4 more minutes, and yet my friend David Dolowitz just wrote, I know this is about Germany, but has anyone looked at the development of a new apprentice system being implemented in the UK at both the school level and is increasingly entering the university structures of offering on-the-job training, even in the social sciences? And David, you'll be surprised, of all things, about 2 years ago at a Virginia Chamber of Commerce event in Richmond, the Minister Counselor for Economic Affairs from the British Embassy came and gave a talk in reference, of all things, some kind of formal agreement involving architects and apprentices, beginning with computer animated design classes. And I can get you the information and send it to you because it's quite interesting. And it actually made that explicit reference, the importance of working not just with the Brits, but other countries like Germany on a range of topics, made its way into the blueprint for the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. But in the last 3 minutes that are left, does anybody have anything to add to that which I just shared about the UK system, which is relevant because the Brits are the largest investor in Virginia? And if you could keep it to within about 30 seconds, that would be great, because we're now competing with empty stomachs. Sarah, Matt, Mike, Whitney? Nothing to add. Good. Well, with the last 3 minutes that are available, does anybody want me to open up the mic? Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? If not, while I'm talking, I'll just say that this webinar will be posted on our homepage. And along with it, a final study tour report, which will be parked into a nice InDesign format with images, graphs, along with some selected PowerPoint presentations that we collected from some of our hosts in Stuttgart in Germany. And then also just a point that, as I mentioned in the beginning, we don't see this as a one-off study tour. We see this as a continuous process. All the points that were raised by Sarah, Whitney, Mike, and Matt about the things that we saw, we intend to try to implement over the short and long term. And that includes taking the educators, ideally some of the representatives from some of our businesses, our enterprises from Germany, along with the students, both from the high schools and the community colleges, over across the pond the next year, 2 years, 3 years. And then ultimately linking this into other efforts across the Commonwealth. The Tidewater area has been pursuing applications of the dual system for a number of years. They've sent a number of delegations, and we'd like to find ways in which comments and thoughts, the likes of which Mr. Varconi just shared or raised, and the answers that came with it, feed into this pedagogical ecosystem. So if I don't hear from anybody with an absolutely urgent, pressing question, I just will close by saying again, thank you so much, Sarah, Whitney, Matt, and Mike, for your time. Must say special thanks to your supervisors, to your colleagues that allowed you to join us. It was such a privilege to get to know you, and it was just super special to have soaked up your enthusiasm, your expertise for this really, really important topic for our region. And I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you all. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch.
Great, thank you so much. It was a joy and an honor to meet you as well, Dale. And I speak on behalf of all of my friends and colleagues here. It was a great experience for us, and we do agree we don't want this to be a one-off. We do want to be able to make some impact in our region. So let's get back together and talk about next steps.
Great.
Yes, agreed.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.